Thomas Jefferson absolutely would have been a Redditor. There's no question. Most of the other founders as well, but definitely Jefferson.
Thomas Hancock would have been a guy who...
Thomas
Hancock was not a guy.
Yeah, no, that was his middle name. He went by his middle name, Thomas Hancock. A lot of people know him as John, but people who know about the Founding Fathers know it was not John Hancock, it was Thomas. He would have been...
Jonathan Taylor Thomas
Jonathan
Hancock.
Taylor. It's tool time, and the tools are dismantling tyranny, something that we need to do again today. But he would have been a Silk Road heroin merchant. He would have killed people, he would have written articles on the Huffington Post, and he would have gotten horny DMs from media guys.
So it's been a long 4th of July weekend. I want to talk about there's like a couple of things that happened over the long 4th of July weekend that were awesome. I think top of the list has got to be Felix's finally doing real-life valor theft, courtesy of Jake Tapper.
I was so happy. Shout out to @Racism Factory for fulfilling one of my dreams. Like, we've all gotten Jake Tapper. We've all gotten him, like, when he does his self-indulgent, like, send me a picture of a veteran in your family and I'll retweet it, because the greatest honor for a guy who got PTSD from seeing child death is for a shitty newsman with a middle part at age 50 to retweet their picture. But, we've all gotten him with, like, Timothy McVeigh.
Charles Whitman.
Heinrich Himmler.
I recently tried to get him with Eric von Ludendorff, but I was not able to. But Racism Factory sent him the photo of me at the faded Election Night live show when when we were doing the Doctor Strangelove theme, and I was kind of Jack D. Ripper.
Yeah.
Purposely put my medals on upside down.
Yep.
And dumbass Jake Tapper, the same Jake Tapper who's such a savvy newsman, he thinks Bana al-Abed is the best source for Syrian news.
Yep.
He retweeted it, and instantly.
Yeah, I am really glad that the crucial job of holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire and reminding people of what truth is in this world has the brain of a goldfish.
Well, I mean, in addition to the fact that, like, it's Felix in uniform, like, I could imagine myself being suckered by that if I didn't know what Felix looked like. The account was just called Racism Factory.
Yeah.
So that was the first tell. But the best part is that the replies to it were, like, all real-life valor detectives who were like, sir, his ribbons are on upside down. He is in beard and uniform. That is not regulation. And then, like,
a CNN military analyst, a colleague of Jake Tapper, said, Jake, take this down immediately.
Yeah. And he's like a conservative, never Trump guy. That's his worst nightmare.
That's great. Oh, man. And then my favorite is other people were replying to the valor detectives going, actually, sir, I serve with Corporal Phoenix in Grenada.
Yeah.
Well, the best one was Sam Chris who said, Felix commanded a very crucial air operation in September of 2001.
Yeah. Then Virgil said he actually called every civilian that he knew in the towers to make sure they didn't go. I am really just so proud of all the people in the extended Chapo universe and all the listeners for just making online a horrible place for these terrible people like Jake Tapper.
Yeah, he's a real moron.
Total fucking idiot.
I remember also recently, didn't he big up that guy, that awful conservative guy?
Yeah. No, I don't want to belabor that point, but he got into it with me because I was mean to the dearly departed Confederate Yankee.
Yeah.
And he was like, guys, I didn't agree with everything he said, but show some humanity. And I had just got done linking to, like, if you just name search Confederate Yankee and Trayvon Martin, you'll see a lot of humanity.
If Jake Tapper was alive in, like, 1946, after Himmler killed himself, he'd be like, I didn't agree with everything he did, but here's the National Suicide Hotline. You should never suffer alone. Save some lives, everyone.
And then, in addition to that, Felix's valor thieving, and being called out in real life by actual valor detectives. That ruled.
Yeah, I purposely, by the way, put my medals on upside down to fool terrorists who target me.
Well, no, you put them on upside down because it was like a sign of distress because, Donald Trump was about to become president.
Sir?
Also, Matt, I want to hear from you. You just were in a parade today, right?
I was. There's a 4th of July parade every year in a sort of bohemian neighborhood of Cincinnati, and the DSA has a spot in it in sort of like a socialist chunk where it's like there's a socialist alternative and there's Black Lives Matter, and we're all there chanting, and it was nice. It definitely made me feel better. At first, when I was standing waiting in line to do it, and it was 900 degrees out, I was like, this is a terrible idea. I wish I was dead. But once we started marching, and I saw regular people cheering us and giving us like the solidarity fist, it was really, really heartening, and I needed it a lot because I just got back from a family reunion that I do every year with my grotesque, petty bourgeois relatives. And for a while there, I just decided that I was a Maoist third worldist, that the labor aristocrat swine of the United Snakes of Amerikkka needed to be destroyed by the righteous violence of the third world peasantry. But now I feel like, okay, maybe not. Maybe we can be redeemed.
Families,
by the way,
folks.
By the way, I made a joke about that on Twitter, and it's weird about the alt-right guys. They really, it's funny. Sort of comical exaggerations for effect. They got really triggered by them. It's weird.
Well, to see a Jewish man like Matthew Chrisman make fun of real Americans is really aggravating.
Yeah, they needed a safe space. I think it's safe to say.
Matt,
do they still think you're a Jew?
Some of them are very much convinced that I'm Jewish. Yeah,
that's so great. Your name is basically.
They think that my family changed their name at Ellis Island or something. Like they were the most Jewish people on earth, and they needed to like throw the scent off when they showed up.
Matt looks like someone who would work on Ludendorff's general staff, and his name is basically like the pork consumer New Testament. like
a week ago when I was traveling, I was flying out of Newark, and like it was just early in the morning, and I was just dicking around on my phone, and I took a photo of like right before I went to security, there was just some shitty airport store just called America with an exclamation mark. And I took a photo of it and I tweeted that. And then I made another joke about how like every man that you see in the airport, like every dad has the same uniform of like, you know, Under Armour polo shirt, like baseball hat of like a golf course, khaki shorts tucked in, sort of like Oakley's or something like that. A fairly mild joke. And they all got very mad at that as well. They were like,
that one guy, he seemed to think that you were denigrating the proletariat.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm really stunned that some basement shithead who, you know, uses his parents' Wi-Fi to tweet Pepe's at people doesn't know what that word means.
You know, the downtrodden working class, the guys who fly JetBlue Mint and complain about how the towels don't cover their entire fat neck. those famous poor people who buy a $78 charger at the airport because they left their other one in their gunt and can't roll it out.
But I thought that was a fairly mild joke, making fun of like the dad uniform. But they took serious offense to it. And they were like, way to mock their sense of belonging of the, you know, you want the working class, but like you can't identify with them. And it's just like, if I had been making cruel jokes at expense of like all the black people who actually work at the Newark airport, they would have, you know, probably been like guffawing.
I had something like that recently. When you remember when Steve Scalise got shot a few weeks ago, and like Paul Ryan is like, this is, you know, we're so brave that we face one shooting every 30 years on a congressman and have more resources and healthcare than anyone in America. But I was like, you know, I said something like, it's funny how we're pretending that all congressmen are brave because like some fat asshole got shot and didn't die. And this guy with a swastika Abby quoted it and was like, oh yeah, just make fun of this guy whose family is scared for him because he's a Republican, right? Yeah, what a chud. And it's like, yeah, that's bad when you're not sensitive to people who are in danger's way.
Well, that's what I said to the guy. I was like, thanks for this. Like, I will definitely, you know, think again before making a mild joke at the expense of a large group of people that are different than me.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's funny that he was coming to Scalise's defense because, I mean, the thing about Scalise is that he is basically 1 degree removed from David Duke, and many people have commented that he, you know, is basically a white supremacist, white nationalist. Yeah. And of course, the response to that is always, oh, so you call anyone you disagree with a Nazi? And then, meanwhile, you know, Keck Himmler seems to be very quick to come to his defense for some reason.
Yeah.
The other thing that was very funny over the this 4th of July weekend from the other side was the two things Trump did this week that made everyone freak out again that I thought were actually hilarious. Yes. Was Let's take them one at a time. First, he tweeted about Mika's face bleeding
my
from
God.
a face.
Bad face, folks. The worst face ever.
he said that he saw Mika at a party and her face was bleeding from plastic surgery.
You know what this made me think of was like the day of inauguration. There's this photo of these Navy SEALs riding around in an armored personnel carrier with Trump flags all over it. And I keep thinking about like how people are always like, he's too macho, he's so alpha. But like, if you look at what he's saying, he just sounds like a NYU junior with a trust fund. This is just such a. It's not even Queenie. It's like a jappy problem he has with Mika. I didn't even want to let you come to my party because your face is bleeding from gross surgery. You look disgusting. Yeah. And all these guys are like, hell yeah, men are back. He's an alpha male. Fuck, I will die for you. Meanwhile, he's just up there doing the feyest hand motions and just has bullshit media gossip about how he wouldn't invite them to his fancy party. Yeah. Like when he was doing the interview about the strikes in Syria, when he talks about the menu at Mar-a-Lago, and he's like, I like to give myself a little treat, double chocolate, and everyone, even the people that hate him, are like, this guy is just too chauvinistic and macho and badass. He's too alpha.
Well, yeah, no, a lot of the like the Twitter libs were like, you know, like again, they keep finding perpetually like the gone too far, sir moment, and insulting Mika's face was one of those things, and his whole rivalry with Morning Joe now,
who used to be big
just hilarious.
Yeah, used to love him.
And then I think Joe Scarborough replied something to the effect of like, you know, when we saw the Trump that we saw at that party is not the same man as today. Obviously he is. I mean, he's maybe like slightly more megalomaniacal since becoming president of the United States, but I mean, he's the same fucking person.
Yeah.
And that was also coming on the heels of like some like society page where they have like their sort of bold names, like Scene at a party. There was some big shindig in the Hamptons this weekend.
Politico.
Listed the guest list that included Ivanka and Jared, Kellyanne Conway, George Soros, Chuck Schumer, Steven Spielberg, Ray Kelly. Yeah, we regret to inform you that this is actually how America works. It's a big party, and you're not invited.
What was the common denominator between just all these
just being
powerful,
rich and evil?
rich people?
They were raffling
why don't they hate each other?
Oh, this is in the course of looking into to Joe and Mika, and like they feel like Trump is like, I feel like he just wants to like just be the most famous person who talks about the news on the news. Like he's a press critic.
I've always said this.
He's like a news media critic.
I've always said this. If Trump's dad didn't beat the shit out of him, he would have just been like a Queenie guy. Like, do you remember in Casino when the ballet guy is like yelling at the girls for gaining too much weight?
Yeah,
that's like Trump. That's like he doesn't want to have sex with women. Yeah, he's just like a mean Queenie guy. And he would, in his ideal life, he just does that and is like, great new Medium article from NYT Fridge. That's what he really wanted to do, but his dad beat his ass.
And
so
what's great about that is that, like, you know, Joe Scarborough and Mika are awful. I mean, like they're abominable. So like, why would I get mad that Trump is being cruel to them? And like the other thing, of course, that happened was that he tweeted that GIF of like the WWE shit. Where
so awesome,
funny,
so awesome.
It was like, I'm like, that's cool. Like I like that.
Some people thought that he actually punched, like attacked a CNN person. Like, that's the level of hysteria. No. I mean, like I've heard people going like, I heard that Trump like attacked him. It's like that's what the press was treating.
That's what's funny because the same person who like overreacted to that and being like, this is a threat against the media, he's attacking the First Amendment, are exactly the same people who are like indignantly being like, wrestling is a fake, right?
Yeah.
They're the biggest rubes of all.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I mean the whole conversation with this is like Trump he's a master chessman because like this was the whole news cycle. And it did distract from HCA a lot but it's not that Trump is a master strategist. We just finally have a president who himself is as stupid as the world. And so instead of like as a plan, he's like, oh, I'm going to act like a fucking idiot and that will distract from this austerity healthcare bill. He's just like, his only instinct is to like tweet wrestling gifs and be like, you're not invited to my party to have my special chocolate cake. And so seeps to the level that our actual discourse is, and it works.
Ben Sass was not happy. He
So
said
yeah, like
no.
the other side to that is people are like, I think actually Jake Tapper like broke down. He was just like, out of all of Trump's tweets, like, I don't see any mention of like there's only like 1 out of every 30 are about actual issues, and I'm like, who are these people who want him focused on actual issues
That's
and
not
not
this whole thing.
He wanted him to talk about Syria. He wanted him to talk about Syria and North
the
Korea.
opioid crisis?
The most sensitive, complex issues. He's like, yeah, this fucking dumbass who just tweets gifs that he finds from like white genocide Himmler 1488.
Yeah.
Like just all his brain is occupied by bullshit media grudges from 20 years ago. I really need him to openly speak about Syria. That would, how like we're almost nearly crashing into Russian jets because like 20 countries are operating in there, and it's a pointless struggle that has the potential to blow up into a global conflict. I want the dumbest man alive, who also commands the most power, to talk about it all the time.
But in sort of preparing for the show today and going back through the Joe Scarborough archives, I did discover that Joe is, he's a musician.
Yeah.
He's a recording
Big time.
artist.
Big time.
And I found out I discovered that he actually has a song about 9/11.
Yep, it's called
Reason to Believe.
Is it
which is a
pro or
Bruce
anti?
Springsteen song in the first place. There's a Bruce Springsteen song called Reason to Believe, and it's not exactly the same song, but it's very close.
Is
It
he
has
covering a Bruce Springsteen
No,
song?
no,
Okay.
it's just a very, very similar song to a
Okay.
song that's already called Reason to Believe.
I have it queued up here, and I was thinking maybe we could listen to a
Oh,
little
it
bit
bangs.
of Joe Scarborough, Reason to Believe.
Very Zydeco, dude.
In the flash of an hour, watching dreams fall from towers, all islands you came tumbling down.
Oh my
Now
sweet
that
Christ.
face on a
That's the
wall
9/11 went
is
needed.
a ghost
Needed a
in the
folksy
hall
tune.
of a place where he never comes round. And what would you guess about a stranger's caress that reminds me of what we used to be? At the
Okay, I think that's enough Reason to Believe.
The Jules
Wait a
Santana
minute,
song.
isn't that the song that Jeff Newsroom plays?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It
Very
is,
similar.
Yes, it's so similar to the Newsroom finale.
It's the newsman's anthem.
By the time I get to the World Trade Center.
Certain people got phone calls on that day.
Didn't you
Google
say?
Black Eagle Trust Fund.
Didn't you say he did a new wave song too?
Oh yeah, I don't have the link to that
Oh,
one. no.
sorry. I thought that was the new one.
I heard it was
thought he
pretty
did a new
good,
song.
though.
Oh yeah, no. Well, he's a good artist.
Yeah.
So that was a. I just like in the beginning where he says like in the space of an hour, seeing hopes fall from towers.
Yes.
Yeah, not to belabor too much of the Trump news, but I thought it was worth bringing up because it's a holiday weekend. Basically, nothing has happened. The only thing that's happened is the president continues to be stupid. But for the rest of the show,
Well, I mean, we killed a lot of people. Don't forget that.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
All over the place.
I'm talking about news items that affect and interest me, Matt. Come on.
Yeah, okay, great.
I did want to bring up, though, sort of as a follow-up to the last show we did, the last premium episode, where we sort of talked about back to the Democrats and their, beginning grudging acceptance of single payer or not, and like the sort of battle lines, the skirmishes that continue to be fought. And I believe on that show I said, like, the whole idea of compromise and, like, purity politics, like, fine, let's compromise, but, like, they got to compromise with us, not vice versa, was essentially the point of that. And I guess, like, the thing is, like, so who are the people left that are, the compromisers or non-compromisers, the holdouts, and how are they adjusting to this, new reality? And there's just a few things I want to highlight from that that have come out over the past week or so. And I want to begin with Jonathan Chait, who's one of the most, probably the lead refusenik of the people whose his knee has not yet begun to quake.
Jonathan Chait, for those of you who don't know, he is a world-renowned pickup artist who dabbles in media.
And I'm sure you saw this. This was a piece that he had in New York Magazine just a week ago. Title of which was 100 years after the Bolshevik Revolution, communism hasn't changed. And this is his response to Boskar's contribution to the New York Times op-ed page, who had this series on as we talked about with China, the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. And this is him, his corrective to the record, that he seems to be saying that, Marxism isn't serious and shouldn't be taken seriously, but it's also a huge threat to me personally, and we should all be terrified of this thing that has no power in the Democratic Party, and if I have anything to do with it, it will still have no power. So, it's not really worth doing this as a reading series. His stock move is to bring up the authoritarianism and totalitarianism that's inherent in all Marxist governments. He writes here, like many Marxist apologias, this fails to grapple with the inherent authoritarianism that is embedded in an illiberal thought system. This is why every Marxist government in history has monopolized power. And
hate a government that monopolizes power. I'm sick of that.
And I think the answer to that is the few that haven't tried to ruthlessly monopolize power found themselves being assassinated within a few weeks. So, CC the Allende government, maybe should have monopolized a little bit more power.
Yeah, possibly.
Shout out Donald.
And then, he goes on to use the example of Venezuela as sort of a cudgel to beat the left as, this is the inevitable result of, Marxism is the Maduro Chavez government in Venezuela, and the fact that that country is sort of like a basket case and is falling apart right now. And then he says at the end, in his Times op-ed, Sankara suggests the threat to democracy today is coming from the right, not the left. That is correct, but only because in the United States today, Marxism represents a minuscule faction with no plausible opportunity to obtain national-scale power. Those on the left who care about safeguarding democracy should work to keep it that way. So, I don't know, what is your response to that? Because on the one hand, he's sort of right. Marxists don't have any real power in America. This idea that socialism is becoming back in vogue after the election, and with Jeremy Corbyn in the UK is a real thing. But at the same time, he's right that the real power doesn't exist yet. At least in political representation in the country. But
and yet he wrote the stupid fucking article, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Right. But shouldn't that tell you something about?
He was still compelled to fucking do this. To write the same fucking article he's written 5,000 times already.
Yeah, he wrote this exact article 4 times in 2016. That's I can't believe we're still debating Marxism, or I'm happy we're still debating Marxism. I'm actually laughing.
Dude, obviously it's going to happen no matter what the fuck you say, so maybe shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah,
clearly your sterling insights have not stopped everyone else from discussing it.
Right, and that's the thing too, is that his coup d'etat on his amazing argument is, they don't occupy any national power now, unlike the Chait faction of ideology, who are just for 8 years just accumulating more and more power until they destroyed Donald Trump in the election, took back their majorities. Chait, the way that he looks at Marxism in this is sort of to remove it from context and take a very broad strokes look at it and look at some trend, to not even go to the specifics of the argument. It's never worked. But if you do the same thing to exactly what he believes, you come to the same conclusion. There's nothing that Chait can point to in his beliefs or in his ideology that worked. That's why he sold 12 copies of his book about how fucking great Obama was.
But liberal capitalist governments have never engaged in political repression, though. So that's the main coup de grace. Yes, and you can't argue with that. That's obviously true. There's never been a case where a liberal capitalist country has engaged in political repression. So, I'm just giving up and tipping my cap because I literally don't know anything about anything. The only thing I've ever read is that article. And so he has convinced me. But
don't you think that, like you said, Matt, the fact that he feels compelled to write this same article over and over again speaks to the fact that the Chaits of the world are feeling just a little bit of pressure.
Because he saw it in the New York Times.
Yeah.
He saw the New York Times, a place that he actually thinks matters and that
His
he
safe space.
wants to be a columnist at, obviously. He sees a place like that printing the words that he thinks should belong in college papers and only college papers, in which he would still write about them in a paranoid way, but he wouldn't actually feel such an urgent fear about them becoming mainstream. So that's why he's writing this stuff, is because there are more and more magazines towing this line. There are more and more op-eds, which, as we agree, don't really matter that much, but to him, that's everything. I mean,
That's his battlefield.
the media landscape is everything to him, and so he's shook.
My favorite thing was somebody responded to it in one of the tedious threads that came off of it on Twitter, elaborating on all the horrible, illiberal elements of Marxist governments to try. Let's not forget this horrible thing. One of the things somebody brought up was the quote-unquote philosopher ships, which were a number of steamboats that were filled with dissident intellectuals in 1922 by Lenin and shipped to Germany. And they're like, wait a minute, I thought you were trying to tell me that this would be bad. Because if you took everybody in America who's considered a public intellectual and put them on a shuttle and shot it at the sun, it would be a fucking vast improvement on discourse and human civilization in general.
While Malcolm Gladwell is on the rocket ship, he writes "burn." While flying directly into the sun is the smartest thing you can do.
Stop taunting me with all these awesome possibilities we could have with Marxism. Like shoving your absolutely useless asses on a leaky fucking paddle boat and sending it out of the Pacific Ocean.
I do want to touch a little bit on Venezuela because it has been used as a cudgel against any left economics, as if this one government experiencing hyperinflation completely invalidates the system, while somehow Greece and every other place on the earth is just a case of it not being done right. But I think it's important to bring up Venezuela because two of the reasons they're having such trouble are they're trying to use the impossible trinity in macroeconomics, which is when you try to have a fixed currency rate, free flows of capital, and sovereign monetary policy, sovereign central banking policy, independent of any other nation. That's one of the only true things from economics, that you can't do all those without experiencing massive currency volatility, but also because they pegged all their expenditures directly to oil.
Yeah.
And to say that that's a Marxist thing, to peg all your government solvency and expenditures to oil, when, despite what Joanne Reed says, Russia, which is sort of like a neoliberal model, did this, and that's why they're fucking cratering economically. It's what states in America do, for God's sakes. But for some reason, these failures, which have ruined numerous sort of more capitalist governments, this somehow speaks to Marxism in a way that, say, killing 1 million people in Iraq for Chait does not invalidate liberal interventionism.
And I want to bring that up because, Chait's whole thing and like this whole genre relies heavily on the human rights record of a communist totalitarian, like just China and Russia, the two granddaddies of communist totalitarianism.
Communist, quote unquote, communist China.
Yeah, sure. And then Chait, of course, was saying, the people in my mentions telling me they're going to send me to a gulag are sort of making my point for me or whatever. And it just this concern, this touching concern for human rights goes out the window very easily for people like Chait. And of course, I wanted to bring up in discussing him a piece that he wrote a few years back in 2013 called Iraq, What I Got Wrong and What I Still Believe. These things I believe. And it just says, he's trying to do a mea culpa here, but he's really not. He's just, covering his own ass here. And he says, my logic in supporting the Iraq War boiled down to the following. The truce terms of the Gulf War, requiring a complete verified shutdown of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, were valid and necessary. And then he just listed, he says his whole reason for supporting the Iraq War wasn't because he was freaked out by 9/11. Right. It wasn't because he really believed George W. Bush. He didn't didn't really think that like bringing nation building or we're going to remake Iraq. He just says we had to go to war in Iraq because of the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
And it was just because of the terms of the truce that ended the first Gulf War is why we had to go into Iraq a second time.
Well, if you remember the first Gulf War, just the horrible damage that the Iraqi army inflicted on us, that proves that they were a danger.
I've seen
to
three
the
things.
world. Yeah.
And he says, looking back, I have several regrets. We know now.
This is just him looking at emails he sent women.
And then he goes on here. He says, I made other errors in my analysis that I should have known at the time. I didn't write any of these things at the time. Why not? I can certainly blame what was then, for me and my colleagues, the pre-blogging age. We still wrote at a print magazine pace, which meant publishing a story every couple of weeks. So he's saying, like, if only I had been able to blog and tweet my thoughts, I could have further elucidated my many serious critiques of the Iraq War.
No, you see, the problem is not that I'm stupid and a bad thinker. If I was able to say my thoughts more often, they would be more correct.
Also, I'm sorry, but just as a pedantic point, the blogosphere was well up and running by the time the Iraq War happened.
So, like,
he had every chance.
I just
That's how we all met, is the 2001 blogosphere.
Yeah, Prometheus's hammer.
Prometheus' hammer, yeah. I was Ninja Burrito. Brendan was Professor Headshot.
But I love the cadence of this essay where, like, I'm just reading the beginning of every paragraph where he goes, I made other errors. Yeah. Indeed, there were other, like, gaps in my thought.
To be sure.
Yeah, he says, the biggest single conceptual failure for my argument for war is that I gave absurdly little thought to the post-invasion phase.
That classic mistake.
And then he goes, but... In other words, I deem the administration's rhetoric about democracy to be a pack of lies. Now, I could accept this because I assume the successor regime would be less brutal than the psychotically cruel one that was being deposed. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to say, but my view of the post-war was facile. I really focused nearly all my attention to the legitimacy of the war and almost none to its advisability. Just like keep in mind here, like with the Chaits of the world, he keeps coming back to like, my conceptual framework was off. The analytical error that I made, like this is how they process the terms of like something that caused probably 1 million deaths and continues to like rend the world open day to day and it's caused, incalculable damage to this country, much let alone Iraq. Jonathan, it's not your conceptual problem or your analytical framework. It's your moral problem. Like that was your error in believing.
Well, it's both. You are an idiot, but you're also a craven asshole.
Yeah, I mean, when you burn someone's house down because someone told you there's a witch in there, and you also thought it would look cool, and then it turns out you killed a family of 5 in there, that doesn't cease to be a moral problem just because you have a bad brain.
He will say it's an ad hominem if you bring this up at any point.
Oh yeah,
another ad hominem about how I supported a war.
Well, and he goes on to describe. He says the Gulf War took place during my freshman year in college. It was the first major American war since Vietnam, and the legacy of Vietnam cast a heavy shadow. And then he goes on his he was going on about like what he goes on to say is that like, well, the Gulf War was nothing like the Vietnam War. It was over in 2 weeks. We got a solid victory. And then he says, under Bill Clinton, we intervened in the Balkans twice, saving countless lives and disproving the skeptics. And he goes, these events had conditioned me to trust the hawks, or at least the better informed hawks.
Hell yeah.
They also conditioned me unconsciously. I love this like this passive, like language that he's
in a Clockwork Orange with his eyes peeled open.
Yeah, he's like
he's
Andy
doing
Smart.
like the Levitico treatment. Yeah, showing the sands of Iwo Jima. It's like, yes,
you don't
only do well.
You don't understand. Madeleine Albright had me in a basement. Yeah. She's very charismatic.
Do you see? You are witnessing a great becoming, Jonathan. The United States is becoming a great power again.
I would love to see him rolling down the street in the next shot on fire.
You know what? You guys are giving him a lot of shit, but he is very consistent on this point because, yes, he's saying that the conditions of the truce that ended the Iraq War necessitated the intervention later with the Iraq invasion. And he has been very forthcoming in saying that since the conditions of the end of the 6 Days War require the end of all settlements on the West Bank, that the UN should invade Israel. And he's been very, very strong on that point.
Outspoken.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah.
Yep. Google it. And then, like, he wrote this in 2013, but listen to this graph here. He says, and I think if you look at the commentary leading up to the Obama administration's intervention in Libya, you see the same pattern asserting itself. Anti-interventionists were treating it as Iraq redux, reprising every argument they wish they could have made in 2003. But Libya was not Iraq. I'd argue it was a success. Not a perfect success, but a superior alternative to standing by as tens of thousands of people were massacred.
Which hasn't happened since, by the way.
So I guess John bought one of the slaves from Libya's new open-air markets.
Also, I think the reason he was writing this piece is because, as you pointed out there, Libya was happening. And either after this one or before this one, there was another piece he was writing going, like, okay, just because I support Iraq, I'm not allowed to have an opinion on Libya now. I'm trying to write about Libya, and you're all telling me that I can't write about it because of Iraq. And then it's just like, correct, you can't write about it anymore.
You should not just not have an opinion about any foreign intervention. You should not even be allowed to change the channel on your TV. You shouldn't be allowed to make any decisions.
Well, just the way that he did that, and he was so outraged that anyone would disqualify him from commentary. And then his commentary is the exact same shit, and he learned nothing.
Yeah.
It's like we've literally proving why you should never have spoken again and why all of your fellow dipshits should have been rounded up and taken on one of those leaky steamboats in Antarctica.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny how after I left my kid in a hot car, I'm not allowed to have any opinions on babysitting.
But but Matt, like the last paragraph here, he addresses the anti-interventionist directly, and he says, they believe that being right on a major event, to them, the major foreign policy event, ought to usher in wholesale vindication, a complete sweeping out of the existing thought and existing thinkers that led to the disaster. I think the lessons of the failure of the war, my failure too, need to be embraced. My reading of history is that sweeping, myopic responses to major recent events usually spawn errors of their own. The people demanding apologies today will find themselves being asked to supply apologies of their own tomorrow.
You know what? Not yet.
Not yet.
It hasn't happened yet. Anti-intervention sentiment has never yet once since then been proven to be wrong.
No, I want to point out, though, that Chait here in this article is making the exact same argument that Meghan McArdle did in her Iraq War mea culpa, where she said, yes, I was right. I was wrong about the Iraq War, but for the right reasons. And I'm not convinced that the critics of the war were right for the wrong reasons. She says they were right for the wrong reasons, which is why I don't believe them today. So these are the same people.
My reading of history tells me that I should never, ever be accountable for anything I ever say.
Yeah, I like the ending of that where the phrasing he uses. They think just because they were right about what they say is the defining foreign policy blunder of our time, that it somehow vindicates their worldview. They think that just because I'm supposedly a horny dumbass who's written the same article for 20 years and embarrasses himself tripping over his dick, asking 24-year-old reporters what chokers are, as if they'll spring up and fuck me because of my confused lame dick dad act, somehow that I shouldn't have an opinion. And it's like, no, you're saying exactly what is going on.
But here's my offering, a peace offering to the Jonathan Chait and the Jonathan Chaits of the world per last episode. Jonathan, he can keep writing about how shitty the Republicans are. He can keep trolling them on New York Magazine and talking about what an abomination the AHCA is and, how awful Trump is. Jonathan, have at it. You're good at it. Keep attacking the Republican Party. The real enemy, as you people like to keep reminding us. However, on any issue outside of that confines, you must defer to your betters. And by betters, I mean anyone who didn't loudly support the Iraq War. Sorry.
I would like to add that you should be doing that writing on an ice floe.
Yeah. Jonathan, to make up for your as you call it, like a mindset blunder, you're not a mindset expert, I think that you just all the boosters that you fucked with, Leanne Weiseltier, everyone, you should have to put on the outfits of the Battlefield characters I play, and you should have to respond to the voice commands from me and my friends so we can play a live-action turn-based Battlefield with live ammunition for my amusement, and there will be no medical treatment. Will teach you about the horrors of war. It'll be fun for me. And it will develop my game as I enter my burgeoning career as the next PewDiePie, but more racist.
Moving on from Chait to a slightly different angle, like I said, talking about like the sort of the tug of war between like the Democratic Party elites and its burgeoning left-wing base. I want to talk about now an essay that was in Dissent magazine from last week by Michael Kazin, a slightly more serious figure than Jonathan Chait. But the headline of this article was Democrats need more than the working class. And like the sort of nut graph is that Democrats can't afford to do away with all of their rich corporate neoliberals like Chuck Schumer. And he's responding to another essay that was in Dissent by Gabriel Wynant, who wrote about sort of like the hopes that the Democrats need a new working class. And I think Kazin's point is, at least begins, is not a wrong one, where he says that, like, look, we're not there yet. There is no, like, there isn't any, like, new working class of, like, that would be, like, analogous to what the Democratic Party used to be, that's ready to sort of step in and be, like, the force that we need it to be in politics to have, like, a kind of social democratic message. However, he goes off the rails from there. He says the Democratic Party is surely far from the fighting social democratic force we would like it to be, but Winant's description of its performance in recent years neglects the progressive achievements its elected leaders have made and shows little understanding of why they failed to accomplish more. The Obama administration was, quote, uninterested in, quote, delivering for working class people. What class, then, do most of those 20 million people who got covered by the ACA belong to, thanks to a bill largely financed by taxes on the rich? And he goes on to talk about the Ossoff election, and I think is correct, as I said on the last show, that I like in that district in Georgia, like a Bernie Sanders style candidate probably wouldn't have done better than Ossoff, because the only people voting in that election are really rich suburban white fucks who are like naturally reactionary and don't want, they just, they don't want their taxes raised to fund schools in Atlanta or whatever. He says, however, the way to recreate a major party is not to abandon a key part of your base. And it's no coincidence that the main organizers of and participants in the, quote, resistance have come from the same social group as do Obama and Ossoff and Wynant and me. He says, I saw very few union banners at the huge Women's March in Washington, D.C. on January 21st, and none at the smaller but still impressive Climate March a few months later. And it's like, well, that's a problem, but like, I think he's coming at it from the wrong angle. Like, I think he's like, well, where were the unions at the Women's March? And it was like, to support the resistance and the social group and class of people like Obama and Ossoff and like the people Chuck Schumer said they were going to win the election on, the suburban Republican voters who were terrified, who thought Trump was a bridge too far. And he talks about, he says, for now, it's crucial that leftists not spend their energy attacking mainstream Democrats, either present or past, as hopeless neoliberal sellouts. It's hard enough to defeat the odious plans that Trump and the Republican Congress want to impose on the nation. If we are engaged in a furious internal battle, it may become impossible. Instead, we should emulate Keith Ellison and Bernie Sanders, who have played down their differences with the likes of Tom Perez and Chuck Schumer, and train our fire at the enemy without, and not at vital, if not always reliable, Democratic allies. So what do you guys make of this? Because like Kazin, like I said, is a little bit more serious than Chait is. And he does, I think, list some sobering things about, like, just how ready this, emerging social democratic coalition is to sort of burst out and take power in this country in the absence of, like, a privatized, the fact that most, like, the public workers are hanging on to unions and virtually no one else. The huge decline in labor participation, like, over the last 30 or 40 years. But the thing is,
which, of course, Democrats were not in any way.
Yes. This is the point.
They didn't help make that happen.
So he's saying that we need to rely on, like, the political and ideological class in the Democratic Party that has done away with the labor movement and attacked the left ruthlessly and, like, undermined any base of, like, left-wing power over the last 30 or 40 years. We need to rely on them as the allies to create this new social democratic working class. And, like, that's where I think he gets it 100% wrong. Again, there's more of us than there are of them, and they got to defer to us, not the other way around. They got to come to heel to us. Not we don't have to be nice to.
What incentive do they have to start pushing social democratic policies? I mean, that's the whole point.
Well, that's the whole thing about, like, when I think
Why would
about
we rely on them to do this.
Well, when I think about, like, these people as allies or, like, someone like Chait or whatever, they're always going to be more comfortable with David Frum than they are with us. Politically, socially, ideologically, they feel much more at home being the sort of polite, cocktail party, contrarian to a bloodthirsty right-wing government that, says the correct things about, certain issues that are their, red lines or whatever, than they ever would be with any kind of actual, like a Jeremy Corbyn style government, for instance.
I mean, I thought that was the whole thing. Everyone brings this up about how there are a million articles from like the Amanda Marcotts about how Trump would be the perfect guy to run against. And their very shallow argument was he's so unpopular, he's so betraying of the norms that it's perfect. Any Democrat, but especially Hillary, will beat him because she embodies all the norms and everyone loves norms. But I think an unstated reason why they liked Trump so much was he was this wedge they thought they could use to build this party that they had been trying to build under Obama. Something that they fantasized for years and years and years, the Purple America, that they could replace the dwindling union memberships and working class coalitions that were used to make a 53% coalition. They could replace them with the sensible Republicans who they thought existed because they only exist in media spheres. They wanted that because to have that party would be to have a base that you owe nothing to. You owe nothing but the worst things that Obama and Clinton, et cetera, did that cost you nothing. You can get all your foreign interventions. You can get your fucking market-based solutions to everything, but you don't have to do a big, expensive healthcare plan. You don't have to do any public works. You don't have to do anything that pits you against your donors. They tried to use the 2016 election to build that party they already wanted, or they always wanted, and it caused them to fall flat on their face.
Right on their face, yeah.
And now they're still lecturing about practicality when they tried to rebuild a party in the face of who they said was the most dangerous candidate of our lifetimes. And there's still these fucking lectures on who should do what and when and how.
And they can't fucking win anything.
Yes.
What do they bring to the fucking table?
This is exactly what I was going to say.
They bring money. Which they can spend on awful ads where some dipshit howdy-doody motherfucker reads these fucking tweets. And where Hillary Clinton, the slow close-up of Hillary Clinton's face for 2 minutes, talking about her SAT scores.
There he is.
That's what they get.
Here he is. Matt, that's exactly right. This is exactly what I was going to say. The response to Kazin is like, he's saying like, well, we can't afford to lose a key part of the base. And it's like, lose what? What are these people bringing to the table? Matt Taibbi had a great point about this right in his article right after the Corbyn win, where he said that for the sort of the base of the Democratic Party, or for anyone who is like slightly like left of center in this country, has been told for my entire lifetime now that like they don't represent enough of the country. They don't have enough. They don't have the numbers to like ever really have power. So that it suits them best to form a coalition with these kind of the sensible, moderate centrists in lieu of being ruled by some right-wing ghoul like Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and now Donald Trump. And I think what we're seeing right now is that's absolutely not true. And you have to make this devil's bargain where I really don't want to be ruled by the Republicans, but what you end up with is a coalition that, of course, favors tax cuts for the wealthy, military intervention in foreign countries, and essentially deregulation and tinkering, but basically a dismantling of the welfare state. These are the people who are our base that we have to make common cause with. The thing is, as Matt has said, they're not even winning anymore. They're not even preventing us from being ruled by right-wing ghouls. To this point, I want to do just another item, this sort of a follow-up on the last show we did talking about healthcare. To this exact mentality, the Center for American Progress right now, just last week, came out with their sort of policy paper about how to fix Obamacare. This is their serious proposal. It's called the Market Stability and Premium Reduction Act.
Oh.
And it says Neera Tanden and
say it again.
Market Stability and Premium Reduction Act.
Mama.
I would die for that bill, for that cause.
And it says Niratandan and Topher Spyro. That's a great name. That's a
No
great
way.
name. Topher Spyro.
He's my favorite Sega Genesis protagonist. Topher Spyro.
Topher Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah.
He flies around collecting earned income tax credits.
And he goes, the Topher, they offer a simple plan to stabilize the individual markets that Republicans could easily support.
Of course they're going to do that.
And like, okay,
Because they're really interested in a constructive thing that fixes the problems of Obamacare without getting rid of it. Because they haven't spent 8 years campaigning to their idiot base that it's communism and it needs to be destroyed at all costs.
no, but this is the exact dynamic and point that we're talking about. Like this is so indicative of it. Where if you read about this awful policy proposal that's completely pointless, like all the resistance people are like, single payer is not happening. Be realistic. You know, they're like, how could you be talking about single payer when the ACA is in trouble? Like, ooh, like, you know, but like the dynamic, this horseshit market stability and premium reduction act has exactly as much chance of passing Congress as a full Medicare for all bill.
Yes.
Exactly the same chance as passing. It's dead on arrival. So why are they still
don't
doing
you
this?
See? It gives Republicans an incentive because they really want to fix it. They want to fix healthcare. That's why they're getting ready to pass a bill that makes it legal for rich men to put out cigars in the eyes of orphans because they really care about fixing healthcare in this country.
But like, how do they learn nothing? This is, if we just introduce the "It's Fun to Paint the Fence" Act, passed bipartisanly, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
And it's this idea that, like, I think, like, if you really push them, they would admit that, like, well, this has absolutely, this has exactly the same, this bill has the same chance of passing Congress as a Medicare for all bill would. But I think they would say that, like, okay, well, what we're doing is, like, it's important for us to present, be the reasonable opposition so that when they, like, shout it down immediately, we can be like, well, we tried to be reasonable. Look at us. And it's just like, when will they realize nobody's giving them credit ever?
And they get a pat on the head from media shit wipes. And Vox.com writes a glowing fucking article about the proposal.
That's not politics.
That's what they're actually after. They're after these fucking lanyard assholes giving them a pat on the head for being realistic.
Matt, is this exactly what you said last week on the show? Like, if you want, you cannot find a better proof that these people actually don't want universal health care.
No, this is the game right here because the politics of it are black and white. There's no arguing what would make an easier, better pitch in elections and in the midterms, but they're refusing to do it because they have vested interests, because they are more representative of pharmaceutical companies and of health insurance companies than they are of any idea of an electorate, and that's who they're going to represent. It's not has anything to do with strategy.
Yeah, I want to read real quick. Carl Bayer just wrote a piece about this that I think gets it exactly right. He just closes out here saying, once we dispense with the pragmatic compromise explanation for the Market Stability Premium Reduction Act,
Again.
it's much easier.
I am empty now.
So he
My
says,
ball sack is like a coin purse.
It's whistling right now, Matt.
Yeah, it's flapping in the breeze.
So once we dispense with the pragmatic compromise explanation, it's much easier to understand what CAP is doing. They're proposing a, quote, bipartisan patch on Obamacare, not because they think they can win through compromise, but because they largely agree with what Republicans want to do. They're promoting market-based healthcare instead of embracing popular support for single payer because they do not want to see single payer succeed. There's no counterintuitive chess game going on here. Liberals are telling the left exactly what they want, and we would do well to take them at their word. So take them at their word, trust in the sort of plain truth of their behavior and the way they sort of signal their priorities. And just realize that, like, it's not that there's no need anymore to make this devil's bargain with these, like, the center right in the Democratic Party because we need them to win or anything. It's not that there's no need for that. It's that they're actively like a liability towards all of us, even their own worldview. they're actively shooting themselves in the foot. So I'm saying, help me, help you. And as I said last week, the first step is admitting you have a problem and then getting on your knees and placing yourself at the altar of Chapo.
As Cameron said,
hell
suck
yeah.
it or not. Ooh, wow.
Oh my God.
I smell
Amber
it.
got
Yeah.
Popeyes.
Okay.
What'd you go with?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
I see some
She
mac and
got
cheese.
7 bowls of mac and cheese. You boys want to eat after this? I had my fucking Grubhub order canceled by the untrustworthy Portuguese.
Oh no.
Oh no!
I could fuck with some Popeyes.
I
man.
have to edit this.
Okay.
I want monster Popeyes.
All right. What's our time at, Brendan? Where are we going?
We've been recording for an hour and 3 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
All right.
Perfect timing. So that's great because I have a great reading series for you guys this week, and this will be a great way to. This will be fun. Reading series for this week.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because we're returning to an old favorite, but not in its usual format. The old favorite we're returning to is Jeff Jacoby of the Boston Globe. Jacoby.
What? Fuck! You want to do that again?
What the fuck?
That's your guy.
I'm rusty.
What the fuck, Will?
Jesus Christ!
How many times have we talked about Precious Jeff? You can't retcon incorrect pronunciation.
Yeah.
When you guys yell at me, it makes me feel attacked. I revert inward into my safety triggers of mispronouncing things.
I have to leave it in now because this was all.
Who's your favorite New York Times guy? David Brooks.
Okay, all right. Just keep it coming. Keep it coming.
That's his Dutch cousin, David Bruce.
Jeff Jacoby.
Yeah.
Jeff Jacoby, father to Caleb. Caleb does not make an appearance this time because unfortunately Jeff has wisely decided to stop writing about Caleb. Or I shouldn't say wisely, I should
He
say.
realized that
Bring it
Caleb
back.
was a lost cause.
This is a perfect. This is Jeff. This is Jeff. Perfect article for 4th of July weekend. People are traveling. You know, they're going out. They're going out into vacationing to the beach, etc. The title of this article for the Boston Globe is "When I Ride the T, I Miss My Autonomy." Get it?
Oh,
Get it?
Okay,
Get
yeah.
it? Here we go. Talking about Jeff, but not Caleb. But this is good because in all of those Caleb articles, the thing that you really learned is just what a unbelievable shithead Jeff is, and just how insufferable he is.
Yeah,
and now,
Caleb is genuinely. I mean, I when I think of children that I have pity for, it's like Syrian refugee babies and Caleb. They're right next to each other.
Dear Mr. Trump, the open letters from my father do not stop. I tried to escape from to New York, but I was found in the M&M store. Please stop. Holocaust Boston.
so without the veil of Caleb now, this is just pure uncut Jeff. So here we go.
Oh boy.
As Independence Day approaches this year, there is less independence in my days. With the Boston Globe's move to new offices downtown, I no longer have the option of driving to work and parking on site. Since the fee for downtown parking garages is too steep for my budget. And I now do something every day that I haven't done since I was a Boston University graduate student. I commute by public transit. As commutes go, mine, so far, isn't bad. Most days, I spend between 20 and 30 minutes on the MBTA Green Line, and both home and office are only 5 minutes walk from a convenient subway stop.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay,
so
done.
a
Finished.
20-minute train ride, 10-minute walk every day. That's like the easiest.
That's fantastic. You should thank public transit for existing and then end your article.
Article over. The tea is great.
Yeah.
No, he goes. But the relative convenience of even a short public transit commute is no compensation for the loss of autonomy it entails. When I would drive myself to work or anywhere else, there were certainly costs involved: traffic jams, bad roads, jaywalking pedestrians, occasional highway tolls, or hunts for a parking space.
Those are
chunks of the big dig falling on your fucking head.
Those are undeniable disadvantages, part of the price of driving a car, but they pale next to the benefit. So he just described like the really like enervating shit, being stuck in traffic for hours. So like his commute, would he have taken public transportation, would have been
Shorter.
half an hour,
Yeah.
but he would gladly do 90 minutes every day, like bumper to bumper in traffic
For freedom.
for the pleasures of driving, which he lists as. When you drive, you have automobility. You travel where you choose by the route you choose.
No,
with
you
the co-
don't.
You
It's
don't.
the
You
work.
don't.
Shut the fuck up.
Oh my god.
You go to work and you go home.
The funny thing is, like commuting in and out of a major city to work, you absolutely do not travel by the route you choose. You choose the same route as a million other people.
This is a great metaphoric sort of
Yeah.
piece about just general market-based politics.
I mean, literally just fucking staring at some asshole's bumper for 45 minutes while you move for 2 feet at a time. And do you think it's... Yeah, no, that's perfect. That is the free market.
Yeah.
You sit in the same smog as everyone else and you think you have autonomy because you press a button.
You're like in bumper to bumper traffic. Driving in Boston, by the way, one of the worst driving
Yeah.
cities in the world. Just bumper to bumper traffic, like gritting your teeth, like listening to talk radio, and I love in Jeff's mind, he's thinking like, I'm captain of the ship, and he goes,
He's singing the HMS Pinafore.
Yeah. The only truth, like when he said the route you choose and the time you choose, like no,
You
like
gotta-
none
you
of these
gotta
things
do
are
the
up
work,
to you.
asshole. Fuck you.
None of these things are up to you when you drive a car. The one thing he does say that is true is you can also choose the company you choose. You can decide your company rather than being on a bus or subway. There's no way Jeff had company driving to and from work every day. It was just him in the car.
Well, he kept Caleb in the trunk. He got him from running out when they got into the traffic.
So he goes, you can take your time and meander or put pedal to the metal. Again, in Boston,
No,
no, you
you
can't.
can't.
You cannot get above.
cannot do that at
You'd be
all.
lucky to get above 30 miles an hour driving anywhere in a Boston metro area. He goes, or put pedal to the metal. You can surround yourself with silence or listen to talk radio or blast Born to Run from your car speakers. Again, just try to imagine Jeff sitting in bumper to bumper traffic, pumping his fist to Born to Run, just eating candy out of a little
Yeah.
bag in between his ham-like thighs.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm the captain. You can go shopping in the rain and come home with 12 bags of groceries. You can be a designated driver in the wee hours of the night. You can get your kicks on Route 66.
That's not
What?
He says it.
Did Jeff go
He
in a
says it.
sex store?
He says it. He says it.
Oh god.
fucking dork. Oh my god.
Reflections.
He's just lucky. He's just lucky that he wasn't writing letters to his son Ronnie DeFeo.
He goes, reflections on independence and individualism aren't usually on our minds when we get in the cars and drive, but that doesn't change the fact that car ownership and freedom go hand in hand. The values we most esteem as Americans are embodied in our car culture. He's right about that, people. And it isn't by chance that so many American songs exalt the delights of owning, cruising, or fooling around in cars. How many anthems have been penned about the happy experience of traveling with other strap hangers in a government-operated conveyance over which no
Let's
passenger...
hear it for ideology, folks.
He goes, a government-operated conveyance over which passengers don't have any control. Again, I don't like. It's this illusion of control that you have when you're being in a car, and I guess
that is why this is perfect, because this fucking article is why this country is this hell toilet that's going to burn itself to death before we ever fix anything. Because so many of us are addicted to this fucking chintzy counterfeit idea of freedom that actually fills us with rage every day because it's not actually being exercised, because it's fake, but we still think it's real, and then we have to blame other people for why we're not actually exercising the freedom that we think is ours, and then that just turns into this deep, hateful resentment of everybody else, and at no point is the actual lie at the base of this presentation of freedom that we think we have question.
I mean, I guess you have like someone like Jeff whose job is to like doesn't really have to go into an office to do his job, which is to write columns that are like why black baseball players don't get it. And like, yeah, I guess he can show up kind of whenever he wants, but like for anyone else, like you really may as well take a train. We just may as well have trains for everyone because it makes, as Matt said, no difference in the actual amount of freedom you have. It's a complete illusion.
Like, there's a certain truth to cars are fun, and if you're driving on like the open road or some beautiful stretch of like Pacific Highway 1, you can feel a certain kind of pleasure in that, the wind whipping through your hair or whatever. But like what he's actually talking about is commuting.
Right, and every shithead who bought an SUV because there was an awesome commercial where it's tearing ass through Yosemite, and they're fucking crawling past a Panera Bread in this fucking $40,000 utility vehicle. At some point, the difference between that fantasy and their shitty reality basically drives them insane, and they decide that it's poor people's fault.
But like in actuality, using like a bus or train or whatever, I actually feel more free because of the money involved. I'm not actually physically tied to the vehicle itself. I can just leave whenever I want. Like I can get out at any point and just like walk away.
Yep.
Unless it's stuck in the tunnel or whatever, which is its own issue with subways in New York City at the moment. But like this idea that like being on a train or bus is like constraining your mobility or autonomy in some way, whereas being in a fucking car is just stupid.
Well, that's I think probably why he's writing this is because he sees a moment to get this long dormant screed out in the open because everyone's mad at the MTA because of a governor that basically believes all the same things that Jeff does, fucking it up. And he thinks that everyone will now agree that actually, public transportation sucks, and we should all be listening to Bad to the Bone as we almost pass out in our commute because of it. Like Jeff. Jeff is pulling up to fucking Baskin Robbins, going like, "Ooh, what flavor am I going to get today?"
Jeff is dressed up like Cyrus from Trailer Park Boys. I love my freedom.
But he goes, nothing is more wearying than a lecture from disdainful environmentalists or self-righteous collectivists about the shameful waste of cars and solo driving. Al Gore long ago proclaimed that hundreds of millions of automobiles pose a mortal threat, more deadly than any military enemy. Americans have, for the most part, ignored such chiding. Even now...
USA! Glug, glug, glug. Glug, 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 glug.
Even now, 91% of all U.S. households have a car. A solid majority, 57%, have two or more cars. And again, like that's not really like, is that really expressing people's freedom of choice or a preference, or the fact that like you have to have a car to live and work in America?
That the automotive and petroleum industries lobbied the government to just interconnect things only by roads and fuck up every train system, and you have to do it or you'll die because you have no right to health care or anything else. Is that freedom? Or I mean, then again, we don't know that all of them don't listen to Roy Orbison while riding other people's bumpers, so who's to say?
Excited to get home and watch Jay's Garage.
He says, those numbers would doubtless be even higher if public transportation weren't so heavily subsidized. Contrary to the popular misimpression that drivers benefit from rampant government underwriting, nearly all public spending on roads and highways is paid for, directly or indirectly, by drivers themselves. When American driver is practically a synonym for American taxpayer, it could hardly be otherwise. The Cato Institute's Randall O'Toole, citing data from the Federal Bureau of Transportation Statistics, points out that taking into account both user costs and subsidies, public transportation costs nearly 4 times as much per passenger mile as driving, while Amtrak costs over twice as much. I don't know what point he's trying to make here, but Jeff is like, in Jeff's mind, he's like, if Boston didn't have the T, for instance, he would be even more free to drive around because there'd probably be another million people on the fucking roads with him every day. I think that's what people mean by drivers are subsidized by public transportation. And that's the other thing. Like major American cities like New York, could not exist without the MTA. It would make no sense. Like you literally couldn't live here. Like there's nothing, no business or like anything could get done. I mean, there's too many fucking cars as is. Like we should probably
like no one drives here and it's still insufferable. Traffic is still fucking insufferable.
So I'm just going to skip ahead to the end here because I can feel Matt's teeth grinding through the phone connection. But it says, automobiles made Americans far freer and wealthier than they would have been without them. They brought knowledge, experience, and natural beauty within the reach of innumerable men and women of modest means. They ended the desperate isolation and loneliness of rural life, gave rise to consumer paradise of modern retailing.
We are calling it a freeway.
Freeway? What the hell's a freeway?
8 lanes of shimmering cement running from here to Pasadena. Smooth, safe, fast. Traffic jams will be a thing of the past. I see a place where people get on and off the freeway. On and off and on all day, all night.
He says, and it made it possible for upward strivers to escape tenement life and own a home of their own in the suburbs. This is just like bizarre. Yeah. One last word before this 4th of July, courtesy of a splendid 2010 Dodge Challenger commercial.
Oh God!
Oh my God!
There's a couple of things America got right: cars and freedom. George Washington couldn't have said it better.
The saddest shit is that he didn't even get fucking paid by the AAA or Dodge or anything to write that. That's just how jacked into the fucking Matrix he is. That just sounded. He just felt that so much in his heart that he had to get it out and have everyone hear it.
But yeah, like I think Matt is exactly right, and I'm glad we picked up on this for this reading series. That it's just a strange conception of freedom. The image of being alone in a car in traffic, listening of like some doughy suburban dad listening to Bad to the Bone and just thinking, yeah. I'm free, captain of the ship until I get home, and then the wife is boss.
Yeah. No, but it is though like a really, really good sort of projection of the id of the kind of conservative or neoliberal market fetishizing worldview, that like a material liberty in being able to buy your own car so you technically own it, and then delude yourself into believing you choose the route you take every day because you own the car.
Yeah.
Is just like, it's what this healthcare debate is about. It's what fucking education debate is about. Just everything. As long as you own it, as long as you have the choice and it's yours, you're more free ipso facto. There's no way that a publicly collectively paid resource could allow you to be
it's like
free.
when he quotes the thing about how 91% of Americans own a car, like that's a representation of how popular automobiles are, and not just like the fact that we don't have any other choice but to have them.
Yeah.
American mothers actually love dying during childbirth. Why else would they keep doing it?
The one thing that Jeff doesn't touch on in this article, I mean, he sort of hints at it in the headline about his autonomy, is that I think, his real gripe with public transportation is that it makes him be in close physical proximity to other people.
Urban dweller, hip-hop types, rapper types of
right.
urban people who certain...
I did not expect such a righteous call on behalf of capitalism and the choices we make in the market from Jeff Jacoby.
All right, guys. Happy 4th of July.
To you.
Happy Independence Day. Happy birthday, America. We do this
I didn't get you anything.
Happy 2017th birthday to America.
We do this mother bitching show for you.
Yeah.
Salute.
All right, we're all going to go, as friends before the show, we have this tradition where we all watch Independence Day, but we do it as Bob Crane and his friend would in autofocus, if you know what I mean. Nothing weird about it, just how men get to know each other. Matt, of course, he cams in, camboy with him. Gentlemen, let's get those engines rolling.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
Last one to come pays for the Grubhub. Let's do this, boys.
Baby, we were born to come.
I miss the autonomy of being able to jack off in my car on the way to work.
That's one thing you can do in a car that you can't do.
That's
on
what he was
public
I've seen
talking
people
about.
do that on trains constantly.
No, I mean you can do it on a train, but you're not supposed to.
You should stop doing
in
that.
in a car. It's your right.
It's not illegal, it's just frowned on.
Yeah, it's just we're talking
in the Third Amendment.
social mores here. Yeah. Okay, guys. Till next time.
Social mores, you mean Othello on Facebook?
Shut up.
Follow me
Shut
at
the fuck
Andy
up.
Borowitz.